My name is Eldric, and for the longest time, I thought I had it all. A loving wife, 2 wonderful kids, and a life that, while not perfect, was mine. I built it with my own hands, worked tirelessly to provide, and always believed that no matter what, family was my purpose. That belief shattered the day I overheard my wife's hushed conversation on the phone. It was a regular evening. I had just come home from work, exhausted but eager to see my family. The smell of dinner filled the house, but something felt off. My wife, Mabel, was standing in the hallway, her back to me, speaking in a low, urgent tone. He doesn't know. He never suspected. Why would he? He's too trusting. It's been years, and he's raised them like his own. It's better this way. My breath caught in my throat. Raised them like my own? I felt a strange ringing in my ears, my heart pounding so hard it almost hurt. The kids, Tobias and Edith, weren't mine? I must have made a sound because Mabel suddenly spun around, her face going pale when she saw me. Eldric, she stammered, clutching the phone. I held up a hand, stopping her before she could lie to me. Who was that? My voice was eerily calm, even though my insides were twisted into a storm of pain and confusion. She swallowed hard, her eyes darting around like a trapped animal. It's not what you think. Don't, I said. Just don't. I needed space. I needed air. My entire reality had just been rewritten in a matter of seconds. These kids, my kids, were not biologically mine. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was that Mabel had lied to me for years. She had let me believe a lie so deep that I didn't even know who I was anymore. I walked out of the house that night, unable to look at her. My mind raced with questions, with memories that suddenly felt like they belonged to someone else. Every scraped knee I had bandaged, every bedtime story I had read. Had any of it even mattered? I wasn't sure. And yet, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to be the same man when I walked back through that door. I drove for hours that night, my knuckles white against the steering wheel. The road blurred in front of me, my thoughts a chaotic storm of anger, sorrow, and disbelief. I kept hearing Mabel's words on repeat. He never suspected. He's too trusting. She had said it like my love for her and the kids was a weakness. Like the years I spent raising Tobias and Edith weren't real because I wasn't their biological father. I ended up in a parking lot outside a diner, staring at the neon sign flickering against the night sky. My body felt numb, my heart a hollow shell. I had built my entire life around a lie, and the worst part? I didn't even know who the father was. Had it been a one-time thing? Or had she been with him the entire time? The thought made my stomach twist. Couldn't go home. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out my phone and did something I hadn't done in years. I called my old friend, Merrick. We hadn't spoken much in the last decade. Life had gotten in the way, but at one point he was my closest friend. He picked up on the third ring. Eldric. His voice was groggy, like he had been asleep. You okay? I wasn't. But I couldn't say that. Can I crash at your place tonight? My voice cracked, and I hated how weak I sounded. There was a brief silence before he said, Yeah, of course. Come over. By the time I got there, I was exhausted. Merrick opened the door, took one look at me, and shook his head. You look like hell. I feel worse, I admitted. He let me in without another word, and I sank onto his couch, rubbing my temples. You want to talk about it? He asked, grabbing 2 beers from the fridge and handing me one. I stared at the bottle, my fingers tightening around it. Then, without looking up, I said the words that made my whole body ache. I found out tonight that my kids aren't mine. The room fell silent. Merrick slowly sat down across from me, his brows furrowed. Wait, what? I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. Mabel cheated on me, lied to me, and I've been raising kids that aren't even mine for over a decade. Merrick cursed under his breath. Man, that's brutal. Brutal wasn't the word. It was annihilating. I spent the next hour telling him everything, from overhearing her phone call to the way she had looked at me, like a deer caught in headlights, like she had never expected to be caught. Are you gonna leave? Merrick finally asked. That was the question, wasn't it? If I left, what would happen to Tobias and Edith? Did they know? Did they have any idea that the man who had raised them wasn't their father? Would they even care? I don't know, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Merrick sighed, leaning back. Whatever you do, don't make any decisions tonight. Get some sleep. Figure it out in the morning. Sleep, right? Like that was even possible. I didn't go home the next morning. I stayed away for 3 days, and when I finally walked back through that door, nothing would ever be the same again. I didn't tell Mabel I was coming back. I didn't know what I was expecting. Regret? Guilt? Tears? But when I walked through that door after 3 days of silence, I found none of that. Instead, I walked into a home that felt like a stage, with actors pretending nothing had happened. The kids were watching TV like usual. Tobias sprawled on the couch, Edith curled up with a book. Mabel was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, humming softly as if she hadn't just detonated a bomb in our marriage. She turned when she heard me, her face momentarily freezing before she forced a smile. "You're home," she said, too lightly, too controlled. Home. The word nearly made me laugh. This wasn't home anymore. It was a crime scene, and the murder weapon was buried in years of deception. I stood in the doorway, my bag still slung over my shoulder. "We need to talk." Mabel's smile flickered, but she nodded, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Kids, go upstairs for a bit." They barely acknowledged her, but I stared at them as they walked past me, feeling an ache in my chest I couldn't put into words. They weren't mine, and yet, every cell in my body wanted to protect them. As soon as their footsteps disappeared up the stairs, I turned back to Mabel. She was already trying to compose herself, but I could see the way her fingers trembled slightly, gripping the counter like she needed support. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice quieter than I expected. Her eyes darted to the side. "Eldric, Don't lie to me." I cut her off. "Not again." She swallowed hard, then whispered, "It's not just one person." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Not just one. The world tilted slightly, and I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. "How long?" Mabel's lip trembled. "Before we were married." Everything inside me turned cold. Before we were married. I had been living a lie for our entire marriage. Every anniversary, every holiday, every "I love you" had been built on a foundation of deception. And then she said the one thing that made my blood run ice cold. "They don't know Eldric, Tobias and Edith. They think you're their father." My jaw clenched. "Then why did you tell someone over the phone that I wasn't?" She hesitated, guilt flashing across her face. "Because I was scared you'd find out. And I never wanted to hurt you." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You never wanted to hurt me? Mabel, you stole my life. You let me dedicate everything to them. To you, knowing the entire time that you were lying." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't care. "You had every opportunity to tell me the truth," I continued, voice shaking. "You let me believe I was their father. You let me love them with everything I had. And now, I don't even know who I am to them." She stepped closer, reaching for me, but I backed away. "I need time," I muttered, "to think, to figure out what the hell I do now." Her voice broke. "Please don't leave again. The kids need you." Did they? Or did she just need me to keep living the lie? I turned and walked upstairs to Tobias and Edith's rooms, just standing there, staring at their doors. I had tucked them in every night, kissed their foreheads, told them I loved them. I was supposed to be their father. And yet I wasn't. But one thing was certain, I wasn't going to pretend anymore. Mabel had built a life out of lies. Now it was time for the truth to take its place. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing in endless circles. My life had been rewritten without my consent. The past wasn't what I thought it was. The future was uncertain. And the present felt like a ticking time bomb. Mabel slept beside me, at least she pretended to. Her breathing was too controlled, her body too stiff. I knew she was waiting for me to say something, to give her a sign that things could go back to normal. But there was no normal anymore. By morning, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to leave. I wasn't going to let Mabel push this under the rug and manipulate me into pretending everything was fine. But I also wasn't going to play the same role I had been forced into for years. If they thought I wasn't their father, I would stop acting like one. The first shift. At breakfast, the air was thick with tension. Tobias and Edith sat at the table, eating cereal, oblivious to the war raging in my head. Mabel moved around the kitchen like nothing had happened, but I could see the way she kept glancing at me, nervous. "Morning, Dad," Tobias mumbled through a spoonful of cereal. Something about that word, Dad, sent a fresh wave of pain through me. I gave a curt nod but didn't say anything. Usually, I'd ask about their plans for the day, make some joke to start their morning off with a smile. But not today. I was done giving parts of myself away to a lie. Edith frowned, looking between me and Mabel. "Are you okay?" I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I'm fine." Mabel tensed beside the stove, clearly uncomfortable. She expected me to act normal. She expected me to bury my pain and go on as if nothing had changed. Not this time. When it was time for Tobias' soccer practice, he grabbed his bag and turned to me expectantly. "Are you taking me, Dad?" I glanced at Mabel, then back at him. "Ask your mom." His face twisted in confusion. "You always take me." I shrugged. "Not today." I saw the moment Mabel realized what I was doing. Her lips parted slightly, and I could see the panic in her eyes. She had broken my trust. Now, she was about to see what it felt like when someone changed the rules without warning. The first cracks. Over the next few days, I withdrew piece by piece. I still did what was necessary. I made sure there was food on the table, that the bills were paid, that they were safe. But the father they knew? The one who went to their games, who helped with homework, who stayed up late watching movies with them. He was gone. And they noticed. Tobias came to me one evening, shifting nervously on his feet. Did I do something wrong? I looked up from my laptop, my expression neutral. "No." "Then why are you acting weird?" I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "It's complicated." Did Mom do something? That question hit me like a sledgehammer. I stared at him, feeling the weight of the truth pressing against my chest. He deserved to know. They both did. But how do you tell a child that their entire life was built on a lie? I wasn't sure. So I gave him the safest answer I could. "Ask your mother." The way his face fell nearly broke me. But this wasn't my lie to keep anymore. Mabel's breaking point. That night, Mabel cornered me in our bedroom. "What are you doing?" she hissed, her voice shaking. I didn't look up from my phone. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean. You're pulling away. They can feel it." I finally met her gaze, and for the first time, I saw something new in her expression. Fear. Good. "They claimed I wasn't their real dad," I said quietly. "So I stopped acting like one." She paled. "Eldric, don't do this. Please." "You did this." I shot back, standing up. "You lied. You took away my right to choose the life I wanted. And now, you want me to just keep pretending." Tears filled her eyes, but I was beyond caring. "You wanted me to be a father to kids that weren't mine," I continued, voice cold. "And I was. But if that's not enough, then maybe I should show them the truth." Her breath hitched. "You wouldn't." I stepped closer, my voice deadly calm. "Try me." She had controlled this narrative for years. Now it was my turn. Mabel didn't sleep that night. I could hear her tossing and turning, could feel the tension radiating off her like heat from a fire. She was unraveling, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was the one in control. She had spent our entire marriage lying to me, rewriting our life into something that suited her, and expecting me to fall in line. But now the story was slipping from her grasp. By morning, she was quiet. Too quiet. I sat at the kitchen table, drinking my coffee, pretending I wasn't watching her. She moved around the kitchen, making breakfast for the kids, but every now and then, she would glance at me, like she was waiting for me to break the silence. I didn't. Tobias and Edith came down, and the moment they saw me, I saw the confusion in their eyes. I wasn't acting the way I used to. I wasn't their talkative, warm, ever-present dad. And they felt it. Tobias sat down across from me, hesitating. Dad, that word again. It still cut me in a way I wasn't ready for. Yeah, I said, keeping my tone neutral. He pushed his food around on his plate. Are you mad at us? I set my mug down, meeting his gaze. Why would you think that? Because you're different. Edith nodded, frowning. Yeah, you don't... She hesitated, like she didn't want to say it. You don't look at us the same way anymore. Mabel stiffened by the stove, gripping the counter like she was holding herself together. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. I don't want you to think I'm mad at you, I said carefully. But there are things going on that you don't know about. Tobias glanced at Mabel, then back at me. Like what? I didn't answer. This was Mabel's mess. She had made sure I never had a say in the truth. But now, she was the one being forced to live in silence. Edith pushed back her chair. Well, whatever it is, we're still your kids, right? Something inside me cracked. I wanted so badly to say yes, to hold on to the idea that DNA didn't matter, that love was enough. But love required truth, and I had never been given that. Instead, I said the only thing that felt right. You should ask your mother. Mabel let out a sharp breath, turning around. Eldric, that's enough. But it wasn't, because Tobias was already looking at her. Realization dawning in his expression. What is he talking about? He asked slowly. Mom. Mabel swallowed hard. It's complicated. Edith shook her head. No, just tell us. She opened her mouth, then closed it, looking at me like she expected me to step in, to help her clean up the mess she had made. But I wasn't going to save her. She had lied to me, lied to them. It was time for her to face the truth. I stood up, pushing my chair back. I have to go to work. And with that, I walked out the door, leaving her to deal with the consequences. The text came that afternoon. Mabel, we need to talk. Now, I ignored it. An hour later, another one. Mabel, please, Eldric. I told them. I stared at my phone, my hands tightening around it. She told them. I wasn't sure if I felt relief or devastation. Maybe both. When I finally walked through the door that evening, the air was thick with something I couldn't quite name. The kids were upstairs. Mabel was waiting for me in the living room, her face pale, her hands shaking. They know, she whispered. I dropped my keys on the table. What did you tell them? The truth. She laughed bitterly, running a hand through her hair. Not like I had a choice, did I? I said nothing. She swallowed hard. They're upset, confused. Tobias keeps saying you're his dad no matter what. But Edith. She won't even look at me. Good. For the first time, Mabel was experiencing what it felt like to be shut out. She let out a shaky breath. Eldric, we need to figure out how to fix this. I tilted my head. Fix what, exactly? Our family. I let out a hollow laugh. Mabel, we were never a family. You made sure of that. She flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? I cut her off. You took my choices away. You decided what my life was without ever giving me a say. And now, you want to act like we can just glue everything back together. Tears welled in her eyes. I was scared. I clenched my jaw. So was I. The difference is, I didn't lie to you. She stepped closer, desperation in her gaze. Please, Eldric. I know I messed up, but don't take it out on them. That hit a nerve. I had spent my entire life putting them first. And now, the one person who had destroyed everything was trying to make me feel guilty for finally choosing myself. I exhaled slowly, my voice steady. I'm not taking anything out on them, but I'm also not pretending anymore. Mabel's breath hitched. What does that mean? I turned away, heading upstairs. You'll find out soon enough. Tobias knocked on my door that night. I hesitated before opening it, finding him standing there, his hands stuffed in his hoodie pockets. Hey, he muttered. I nodded, stepping aside so he could come in. He sat on the edge of the bed, fidgeting with the strings on his hoodie. So, Mom told us. I swallowed. Yeah. He was quiet for a long time. Then he looked up, his eyes glassy. Are you still gonna be our dad? That question nearly broke me. I sat down beside him, struggling to find the right words. I don't know what's gonna happen, I admitted. But I'll always care about you. That won't change. His lip trembled. But you're mad at us. No, I said immediately. Never. He looked away. Edith thinks you hate us. My chest ached. I rubbed a hand down my face, exhaling. I don't hate you. I don't know how to be the same person I was before. Tobias nodded slowly like he understood. Will you still come to my games? He asked quietly. I wanted to say yes, but I wasn't sure if that was the right thing anymore. So I said the only thing I could. I'll think about it. He nodded again, then stood up, lingering for a moment before he left. I sat there in the silence, staring at the door long after he was gone. For the first time in my life, I had no idea what kind of man I was supposed to be, and I wasn't sure if I ever would again. I spent the next few days in limbo, caught between the past I thought I had and the uncertain future ahead. The weight of betrayal still pressed down on me, but something else had begun to stir underneath it. Clarity. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just reacting. I wasn't just doing what was expected of me. I was thinking. I was choosing. And what I chose above everything else was peace. Mabel had taken my choices away for years, but that didn't mean I had to let her dictate what happened next. The kids weren't to blame for any of this. Tobias and Edith had no idea about the lies they were born into. And if I wanted to be the man I thought I was, the man they had known, I had to be better than my pain. So I made a decision. Started small. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table again, just like I always had. Mabel looked at me like she didn't know what to expect, but I didn't give her a reaction. I just drank my coffee in silence, thinking about what I wanted to say. When Tobias came down the stairs, he hesitated at the bottom, like he was unsure if he was welcome. That hesitation cut me deeper than I expected. Morning, I said, setting my mug down. His head snapped up, and I saw relief flicker in his expression. Morning, he muttered, shuffling toward the table. Edith followed, her movements more cautious. She sat across from me, keeping her head down, poking at her breakfast with her fork. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I want to talk to both of you. They both looked up. Even Mabel froze by the counter, gripping the edge of it like she was bracing for impact. I met their eyes one by one. I know things have been weird, and I know you're confused. So I want you to hear this from me, and not just from your mom. Tobias sat up straighter. Edith swallowed. You know the truth now, I continued. You know that I'm not your biological father, and I won't lie to you. That hurt me. A lot. Neither of them spoke. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. I exhaled, steadying my voice. It doesn't mean the years we spent together weren't real. It doesn't mean I don't care about you. Edith's eyes welled up with tears. So, what happens now? That was the question, wasn't it? I looked at Mabel. For the first time in days, I didn't feel anger when I saw her. Just a deep, quiet sadness. I can't stay married to your mother, I said, my voice calm. There are some things you can't come back from. And what she did. I glanced at Mabel, watching her flinch. She made choices that hurt all of us. Mabel's lip trembled, but she didn't argue. Maybe, for once, she knew she didn't have a right to. But I'm not leaving you, I continued, turning back to them. You're still my kids, no matter what. If you want me in your lives, I'll be there. Tobias nodded immediately. I want that. Edith sniffled. Me too. I felt a lump in my throat, but I swallowed it down. Okay. Mabel finally spoke, her voice small. I know I ruined everything, but I hope you can find a way to be happy, Eldric. I looked at her for a long moment. I didn't forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I was done letting her decisions define me. I will, I said simply. And for the first time in a long, long time, I actually believed it. Epilogue. The divorce wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I moved into my own place a few months later, And despite the fears I had, Tobias and Edith stayed in my life. Tobias still called me before every soccer game. Edith still sent me her school essays to proofread. They still needed me, and the truth was I still needed them too. Mabel and I didn't talk much anymore, but we were civil. I let go of the anger not for her sake, but for my own. And for the first time in years I felt free. I had spent so much time thinking that my life was over the moment I found out the truth. But it wasn't. It was just beginning.